This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I'm your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing.
I got one more thing I'd like to talk to you about right now.
You've been patiently waiting for updates from the various proceedings that all seek to imprison Donald Trump, convict Donald Trump, take Trump down, on and on. I obviously have to pay particular attention to it because I work in this space, but personally speaking, I would be interested in seeing what the world looks like if folks no longer espoused the views of this man and no longer hoped that he would be their leader. I wonder if the Republican Party in this country would begin to reform itself and adopt a more consistent platform, at least more consistent with what they've historically been in this country. Dare I say, I kind of missed that. I didn't realize how cool the old school Republicans were back when I was voting in the election that saw George Bush elected, not Kerry, who I wanted. Those Republicans, looking back, you see, those were some decent folks. They weren't nearly as extreme. That's not my opinion. I mean, that's well documented in more places than just this show. And my feeling is that while there was certainly some division, folks, for the most part, were able to engineer solutions to very complicated problems. Where we are now, with Trump having a stronghold over the Republican Party in this country, it is almost impossible for anybody to get anything done. And I know that I'm not the first person to tell you that. Indeed, you probably know it yourself. So, obviously, I'm paying very close attention to all the trials, the one in Georgia specifically, because that was always the one that felt like it had the potential to actually affect something in terms of this upcoming election. Well, turns out that the people at the helm were not perfect. And they are people. And now I'm trying to figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong, and maybe even what this could mean in the future. And I know that we're not going to get all of the answers to these questions, but whenever I am beyond the realm of expertise, which admittedly is very small, I have a handful of people that I call on. And one such individual I have the pleasure of sharing today's show with. She is my longtime lawyer, and indeed now she is a civil rights attorney, goes by the name of Amy Owen, and you may know her online being ever so glamorous and ever so engaging as Pineapple Lawyer. So welcome to the show.
I am so honored, Ramses. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And it is I who am honored and always just amazed by the things that you're doing in this world and the way that you are trying to change society. I love it.
Well, I have a good community, and you are, to say central to that community is an understatement. You, again, have been my longtime lawyer, but also just an amazing friend and one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And so my hope is that we will be able to have conversations like these regularly, because it turns out there's a lot of legalese that, the world is wrapped up in. Yeah, indeed. And, rather than just kind of having these conversations to the best of my ability, it might be meaningful to tap on your shoulder for a bit of expertise when it makes sense. I know you're a
Sure.
busy woman. You're out making all the money and doing all the things.
I don't know
and-
about that, but
Well,
the law touches everything,
Yeah,
as
the
you
law
know. So I
touches
think that's what you're running into.
Sure.
You bump into these things and you're like, oh, hold up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know the legal
Yeah.
ramifications
But
or.
I have a lawyer that does, specifically the pineapple lawyer. And so what I want to do for the benefit of you, our listener, is share a bit from CBS News to kind of bring you up to speed in terms of what is going on in Georgia. So I will share. Fulton County DA was booked on flights paid for by prosecutor, records say. Right. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis was booked in at least 2 sets of round-trip flights purchased by a special prosecutor with whom she's accused of having a romantic entanglement, records appear to show. Jocelyn Wade, the estranged wife of special prosecutor Nathan Wade, filed an exhibit in the couple's divorce proceedings on Friday, purportedly showing the spending history of a credit card used by Nathan Wade. The document shows Nathan Wade booking tickets for himself and Willis on flights to and from San Francisco and Miami. The new filing came one day after an attorney for Willis accused Jocelyn Wade of trying to interfere with the district attorney's election interference case against former President Donald Trump and other defendants. Jocelyn Wade is seeking to question Willis in the Wade's ongoing divorce case and filed the new exhibit in response to Willis's claim. Until Friday's filing, no evidence of the alleged relationship had been made public. Willis was first publicly accused of being romantically involved with Nathan Wade last week in a filing from Michael Roman, one of Trump's co-defendants. Roman alleged in a motion that Willis and Wade carried an improper, clandestine personal relationship while Willis paid him more than $650,000 over several years to work on the case. He claimed that some of that money was used for Caribbean cruises they took together, as well as for trips to Florida and California's Napa Valley. So, now that this has come to light, the lawyers, this was our biggest hope, Fani Willis. She was, I mean, we talked about her on this show and on my other show, Civic Cypher, how she's, you know, we need to be listening to Black women. Black women are saving this democracy once again, you know, all this sort of stuff. So she was our champion, and now for her to be caught up in this, we got to make heads or tails of it. So first impression, how does this hit you?
You know, I always say if it feels unethical, I don't do it. I don't touch it. It's a gut feeling sometimes that you have. A lot of times with conflicts of interest, it's that same thing. If it smells funny, it looks funny, it acts funny, it usually is funny. You probably should not be going down that road. Lawyers have specific ethical duties not to have conflicts of interest. For example, I can't represent you, and then if someone is suing one of your radio shows, I can't also represent that person, correct?
Sure.
Because that would be an obvious conflict of interest, because I cannot look out and advocate for you and advocate for the person who's suing you. So in a case like this, if she is supposed to be hiring or in charge of getting someone into the correct position to do an investigation into something that's already a huge cluster, you know what? She cannot also be having sexual relations with that person or be receiving any type of financial gain, including a trip or anything. Does that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of.
So how about this? When you mention she cannot be having a romantic relationship, is this just something that's like preferred, or is there a rule, or is this something that a person could maybe even get disbarred for? You would know better than
Sure. And of course, the lawyer answer is always, it depends, right?
Okay.
Lawyers are
Sure.
always going to say
Sure,
it depends.
Yeah, sure.
Ethically, lawyers can never have sexual relations with clients. They cannot have relations of any type of romantic or sexual nature with a client. If they were already romantically involved or sexually involved with someone before the person became a client and it carried on through, then it's okay, because it was initiated prior to the person becoming a client. But they cannot enter into a sexual relationship with someone once they've signed a fee agreement and made someone their client or something like that. But this is kind of not the exact situation because that person is not her client per se, but it has power to assign certain duties and request that someone look into something, or she's the one who's
the team.
She's part of the, yes, exactly. So that makes it, the conflict lies in the fact that if you're having sex with that person, your judgment may be clouded and you may think, hey, this person is great for the job. But then other people are going to say, well, not only is that person that you're having sex with going to be in a position of power, they're going to have some influence and they're going to be paid for that. And you cannot assign them that job because of your romantic sexual relationship. And that's what makes it very precarious for her to do anything of the sort.
So one of the things that felt a little unfair is when, in the article, and this comes from the defense in this case, was that they said that he was paid $650,000 over several years, right? And when you lump all that money together, people see the money, but they don't often see the several years part of it, which just kind of sounds like getting paid to be a lawyer. But do you think that the defense has a case that they can make to say that maybe this trial is a sham, or that this is unfair, or the case should be thrown out, or anything like that? Is there anything that us who are wanting to see justice for the truth of the matter, which is that Donald Trump made a phone call and said, I need you to find me, I forgot the number of votes, but I need you to find me this many votes in Georgia. And we all heard it. We know that it happened.
Right.
Do we now lose because of what I would consider to be a technicality, in that this lawyer has now entered into a relationship with this prosecutor, and the defense now has sort of a loophole out of which they can escape?
My personal opinion and my legal opinion probably would be a little different on this one, because my personal opinion.
Let's do both.
Okay. I think my personal opinion is that, if they were working closely together, sometimes things happen. Chemistry, people who work closely together oftentimes find themselves entangled, right? And there might not be anything shady about it. But the lawyer and the legal side of me says, you should have been professional enough in that situation to know that this is really important business that we have. We are trying to prove that some really bad things happened, and that our justice and our election system in the United States is under attack. So you have to put that above your selfish romantic or sexual needs at that time. And so in my legal mind, I'm like, no, you don't do that, because I don't ever walk up to that line and say, oh, there's the line. I think I'm going to cross it today. I already have my mind made up. If I ever get a situation presented to me and I have a choice to, step a little bit into the gray area, I'm not going to.
Yeah, run the other way.
Run the other way. Exactly. You know me. You've known me for years. And whenever you ask me for legal advice, what do I always tell you, Ramses?
You'd speak to me like a lawyer.
I never speak to you like a friend. I put on my lawyer hat and I say, no, Ramses, you can't do that, because you could land up in a lot of hot water.
Sure.
And you always listen to me.
Absolutely.
You never are like, oh, I'm going to go the opposite way that Amy Pineapple told me to. No. And I think that, it at least gives them something to sink their teeth into, which makes me personally very sad, because I think that it probably didn't really affect anything, because like you said, the facts are the facts. You cannot change the facts in a legal proceeding. Some of my cases I would love to be able to make a fact more in my favor, but you can't. You always have to go with whatever actually happened. And courts and judges and juries are usually pretty good at figuring out exactly what happened. So that's the hope here, that even with something like this, where this little relationship came to pass, hopefully the facts are strong enough and what really happened are strong enough where it doesn't affect it.
Okay. So let me ask you this then. lawyer cap.
Got it on.
This one might be, I'm going to ask you two questions, and they're opposite questions almost. Okay. First question is, if you were a lawyer having to defend Fani Willis, could you do so, and how would you go about doing it?
The charges would be what? Conflict of interest?
Maybe, I'm not sure what the charges would be, but let's say you had to defend Fani Willis.
Oh, for her actions,
for
just
her
in
actions
general.
against Trump's defensive team. Could you do that in front of a court? Is there enough there to be able to defend her, to say, hey, this is, I'm not sure what the legal proceeding would be, but
Sure. I think context matters.
Okay.
And I'd have to find out when their relationship began.
Okay.
What the timeline was,
Okay.
how long they've known each other.
Sure.
If, were they law school friends from back in the day and had already gone out on a couple dates, in 2000, and then 23 years later they hooked up. I don't know. So there would be a lot of things that I would want to find out. There would be a lot of questions, and I would need her. Obviously, if I was her attorney, she would have to tell me everything. She couldn't hold back. You always have to trust your attorney. You can never keep facts from your attorney. And I would, obviously try to say, okay, was there any time in the romantic relationship that you tried to convince him of certain facts that were within the case, or tried to persuade him in any way, shape, or form? If she told me no, then I would be able to go into a court and advocate for her and say, listen, the relationship was completely separate. This isn't even an ethical issue because he's not her client.
Now, let's say you are on Trump's defensive team. You're a lawyer. Okay?
No,
So
I don't want to be.
This-
I don't want to be on Trump's team. I want
Well,
to be a lawyer.
I know what you're saying. But let's say, for instance, that you're on that team, because this is perhaps the best insight that I'm going to be able to get,
Right.
and maybe a lot of our listeners might be able to get.
Sure.
And you now have to make a case that the case that has been brought against your client, Donald Trump, is nefarious, it is unfounded, it is baseless, whatever. And it's because there's been some sort of mishandlings or something like that. I'm not sure how you would do it, but my question again is the opposite. Could you argue that side of things as well?
First of all, you're always able to argue anything in a court of law, right? We've seen that with the Trump
Sure.
administration, right?
Sure.
But the test is, can you make that argument with a straight face?
Mhm.
Can you actually present evidence and facts and make that case without, laughing out loud, even to yourself, with a straight face? I think if I was on the defense team, I think that this is a bullet in the chamber. I think this is something that says this taints this a little bit. It
Yeah.
smells bad, right? So, I think that they can use it and possibly get a little leverage on their side from it. Do I think that it is going to blow the entire thing out the water? No, because again, you can't change the facts.
Okay.
But I don't like the way it makes the people involved on the other side look.
Sure.
And if I was on Trump's defense team, oh yeah, I would be screaming and jumping up and down and yelling, hey, this is what they're doing. This is how the whole thing has gone down. How can we believe anything that any of them say? All of this is just shady as hell, right? That's how, if I was on that team, I would present it, and I would shake the tree and see what comes out. What's going to fall out of that tree once you start shaking it. But that's all politics. I feel like the more you
Find some dirt.
the more you look, it's just like a girl that goes through her guy's phone or vice versa.
Mm.
You look for something, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
You are going to find it. So,
Listen,
you're asking some tough questions
real
today.
quick. I want to, just while we're here, this is a slight departure
Did I go there?
from the subject matter here, but I like to say this because you're not wrong. When you look for something, you're going to find it. But at least when it comes to the phone thing, One of the things that I say to a lot of people, anybody who will listen, is that if you're looking through somebody's phone, you're definitely going to find it, even if it's not there. Okay, and that's one caveat I like to add just to that one thing. I don't want to give anyone license to go look through anybody else's phone. If you're looking for something, your brain will manufacture it, and the real world works very different from the court of law. So don't want to have anybody running off and,
Right.
Anyway.
Ramses
So,
and Pineapple
yeah,
Lawyer
we're
said to
saying
go look
in
through
the
your
phone,
phone.
find it. No, that's not what we're
Nope,
saying.
nope.
Okay. So how about this? One of the things that I believe the Trump defense team has wanted in all of his various court proceedings has been a delay until after the election, a delay so that he can pardon himself. I mean, he can't really pardon himself in the state of Georgia, but he's wanted these delays so that he can assume the role of presidency. And he has a lot more strength when it comes to maneuvering around his predicament, right? Or predicaments, plural. Is it possible now that this has come and it is coming to light that he might be in a better position to have that delay that he wanted? In other words, could his legal team maybe have this thrown out, or everything that's been brought forth so far thrown out, and start fresh with new prosecutor, new district attorney, that sort of thing?
I mean, it's definitely a cookie, not a pilot. You know what? It's
Okay.
this is something that is helpful to them in their general cause for making it seem like they're the good guys, and the other side are the ones that are in the wrong.
That's
So,
yeah.
you asked me, is it possible? Sure. I mean, in court proceedings and different legal scenarios, anything can come and be a roadblock, right? Any little thing, even smaller than this. And this is kind of it's a thing,
size.
I feel like it's not nothing. So,
Yeah.
technically, I think it could delay some things. It's at least going to make both the court and everyone who's involved in the investigation take a look and say, hey, was anything improper here? Were protocols followed? Were guidelines and rules, broken along the way? And is it so bad that we're not getting to the ultimate truth? Because I think in the legal world, as much as politics is dirty and grimy, I think most lawyers really do want justice. I think they do want to make sure that whatever side is correct and whichever side is in the wrong is found wrong. Whichever side is correct is, and usually courts and juries get it right most of the time.
Mhm.
Not always. Of course, you always have your issues and things like that. But I would say more times than not, our legal system works pretty well. I mean, there's tons of flaws, and trust me.
Yeah, and they disproportionately affect people that look
Black
like you
and
and me.
brown,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So, I mean, but I think on big things, most of the time, things. Well, gosh, I'm saying that, and then look at what our Supreme Court has done
Yeah.
lately. I guess maybe
right and wrong is very subjective, and it's based on individual sensibilities. And so, as
For
close
sure.
to right and wrong as a person can determine for themselves, or indeed for a society.
Certainly.
I know what you're trying to say.
I'm saying there's so much gray in there, but I still do have some faith in our justice system. As a civil rights attorney, I know that things are broken in our society in a lot of different ways, but I hope that this doesn't delay what's going on enough that gives Trump that extra little push that he needs to
Yeah.
get into office. But I don't like that it happened. I'll be honest. It's a ding on our side,
Yeah.
and it hurts. And when you asked me to come on and talk about it, I was like, oh gosh.
It's a tough one.
But at the same time, I think people do want to understand those types of conflicts of interest, and I think it's such a gray area.
Sure.
That it's hard to even understand. So I hope I've shed a little light on it instead
Absolutely.
of mucking it up even
No,
worse.
I certainly know, or I feel more confident in the knowledge that we have right now. Obviously, this is ongoing, so we're going to keep paying attention to it. And this is kind of the way it goes. A lot of times, especially for folks who are, I personally feel like Donald Trump is a a significant threat to us creating a more equitable society for all of us. And, he's not the biggest threat that our people have experienced since being in this country. And he won't be the last threat that we experience to the threat in terms of what goals we want to achieve as a people. But, this path has very much been, one step forward, two steps forward, three steps forward, one step back. You know what I mean? And so
5 steps back.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's 5 steps forward, but the overall trajectory of our plight, path, journey, whichever word works best, is toward justice. Indeed, the moral arc of the universe, to use the quote, is long, but it bends toward justice. And so I think that is as appropriate a statement for this conversation as any. And so my hope is that, of course, this is not a step back, but it's important for us to know what we're looking at so that we can prepare for what may be coming, which it seems like no matter what happens, it will come down to a bona fide, unencumbered rematch of the former president, Donald Trump, and the current president, Joe Biden, which is, that's reliving perhaps the worst part of 2020 over again, but it can't last forever, man. They are the two oldest people.
Right.
and I'm not to wish death on anybody. Well, but it doesn't last forever. And
Right.
again, knowing what we're up against helps us to prepare our offensive and defensive strategies. If we need to know, it just kind of informs how our politics take shape and how active we are and in what ways.
Never leave me in the dark. Always let me know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
But with that said, let's put a
cross
pin in
our
this.
fingers and
cross our fingers, put a pin in this, and we'll revisit it. And hopefully some other things. I would love to have you on more frequently if you're not opposed to it.
I'd love to.
Incredibly insightful and certainly can.
Listen, I wore brand new shoes for you today. You know that. I know the camera can't pick them up. We were trying. Oh, look.
What's the name of these shoes, by the way?
These are Valentino's.
Okay,
Valentino. But I'm a shoe girl, so I wore my best shoes for you, Ramses, because I think you're everything.
All right, we'll take it, man. All right. Well, once again, before you go, let folks know how they can plug in with you and get a dose of that glamour that you're serving.
Hey, Pineapple Lawyer is my Instagram, my Facebook. I think I do have TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little baby TikTok, but Pineapple Lawyer on pretty much everything. If you just Google it, it brings up my law firm, which is Owen Law Firm.
Mm-hmm.
Do not put Pineapple Lawyer on any court documents or anything. Pineapple Lawyer is just a branding and marketing tool, but it helps me serve my community and helps me get justice for people. So I love using that.
I when you mention the word community, I'm going to let you go, of course, but I happen to know off the record that your work goes well beyond your community. And I know some very significant names that you work alongside, and when the time is right for you to share this, I would love for you to do that. But you're doing rather more than just helping out your community.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think you're talking about my esteemed co-counsel Ben Crump.
Yes, I didn't want to say it, but yeah. So.
Love that guy. He and I work on some big civil rights cases together, and he's just a pleasure. Everything that he stands for, he really is in real life. Mm-hmm. He once told a group of attorneys on a Zoom at the end, he said, "Okay, love you guys." And all of us just sat there like, attorneys never say love you at the end of a Zoom. Who is this guy? But that is who he is. You would love him, Ramses. Next time he's in town, I definitely want to introduce the two of you because you're like spirits and justice fighters. And
let's do it, man. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming up, and let's do it again soon. You, our listener,
thank you for having him.
If you have any thoughts that you'd like to contribute, of course, you can reach out to me on all social media at RamsesJah, or you can use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. Let's keep the conversation going, and until I hear from you, peace. This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show was produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice, from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.